A remarkably quick verdict tonight in the case of one of the worst crashes that Colorado's recently seen. Jury took less than a day of deliberating to find a semi-truck driver guilty of killing 4 people when he slammed his out-of-control rig into stop traffic at the bottom of the foothills. Rohel Aguilera Maderos guilty on the most serious charges of vehicular homicide for all 4 deaths, along with some additional assault charges for the people who were injured. He was coming down I-70 that day, April of 2019, when he lost his brakes and did not take a runoff truck ramp. The crash and fire that followed were catastrophic. Aguilera Maderos faces as much as 48 years in prison when he's sentenced in December if the judge determines that those sentences should be served consecutively. History tells us Colorado voters hate raising taxes on everyone. They will, however, make an exception, history shows, for raising so-called sin taxes. Increased taxes on things like cigarettes, gambling, marijuana. Well, every voter in Colorado gets a say on Prop 119 this fall. It would raise pot taxes for education funding. Politics guy Marshall Zellinger explains.
Proposition 119 looks wordy and confusing. A yes vote means you want to increase the state pot tax from 15% today to 20% in 2024. It would also transfer about $20 million a year from the state's general fund, money lawmakers decide what to do with, and another $20 million from a fund that currently pays for school repairs and some school district funding. That would create a new fund for out-of-school learning and enrichment. A no vote means the statewide pot tax stays at 15% and no other changes are made. Saying yes to 119 would not pay for K-12 in-school education or teacher needs. That is paid for through your local property taxes. And when your local property tax is not enough, the state has to backfill. A yes vote would create LEAP, the Learning, Enrichment, and Academic Progress Program. Students from low-income families and those working below grade level could be eligible for at least $1,500 a year for outside-of-school tutoring, second language training, even mental health services. Providers of that would have to be certified by a new Colorado Learning Authority, and parents could not be providers and seek money to teach their kids. You won't see that on the ballot. It's part of the legal language that gets put into law.
Now I know what you're thinking. How much is this going to cost me when I buy pot? Oh wait, you were thinking that. Humor me anyways. I want to show you a page out of the Blue Book, and I find it fascinating. The state has to show how much it might cost pot buyers if the state tax is 20%. So find your income level on the left. And the dollar amount on the right is the state's estimate for how much more you'll pay in pot. These are all estimates since the state cannot track the income level of people buying pot. The state used statistics from the U.S. Department of Labor and the Centers for Disease Control to come up with this estimate. The bottom line, right, literally at the bottom, the state believes 1.2 million people buy pot, and that higher 20% tax would create $137 million. The middle part there is blurred because it shows how many people in that income category buy pot, and how, like, I just didn't want to confuse you too much with too many. I find this amazing.
That is fascinating stuff. Like, I'm furiously taking notes on that. So per the state's calculation, people who make $250,000 to $499,000 a year, so people who are doing real sweet, not spending a whole lot of money on marijuana, but the people who are making the $100,000 to $150,000 are literally blazing through their money.
If I'm reading that correctly, and I think I am.
That's wild.
The lowest income levels more people buy pot in the low income levels, but small amounts of pot. The people in the 100,000 or the $1 million range, there are fewer people in that category, but they buy the most so that they would have the highest tax impact.
That's wild, though. Okay, so when you showed those tax percentages, I mean, like going up to a 20% tax on marijuana, like that's a significant amount of the purchase price going to taxes, but it could be even more depending on which city you're in.
Right, in some cities, Denver, I have notes here, Debec, Fort Lupton, Idaho Springs, Lakewood, Los Animas, and Yuma are all having city tax questions. So you have the state tax for marijuana, and then cities tack on their own. And in those cities I just referenced, you're going to see another ballot question for your city tax. So you're not seeing duplicate. You're seeing 2 different taxes on marijuana.
Some of those totals were wild. You people need to start saving money for groceries. All right, thank you, Marshall. Political rhetoric. It's got to be pretty sharp these days to get our attention. Accusing your opponents of being pro-criminal because they support police reform, that's pretty striking. And that's what's going on in Greenwood Village's nonpartisan municipal elections. The mayor and Republican allies are going after candidates who are aligned with Democrats at the state legislature. Greenwood Village Mayor George Lance and two former mayors, including current Arapahoe County Commissioner Nancy Sharp, sent a letter to voters accusing their political opponents running for city council of supporting a plan to, quote unquote, empty our jails. Lance's letter says they have a pro-criminal agenda cloaked in the language of equity and inclusion. Democratic State Representative Meg Froelich represents Greenwood Village.
I think the best thing you can say about these kinds of statements is that they're tone deaf. I think they open themselves up to much worse descriptors. What a terrible statement to make, to equate equity and inclusion with being pro-criminal.
Mayor Lance and his co-signers did not respond to multiple requests for comment. Greenwood Village, of course, is the city that tried to get around Colorado's new police accountability law by offering to pay the legal bills of its police officers if they engaged in misconduct and were sued. Democrats in the state legislature later closed that loophole. One of the most obvious lessons to come from the pandemic is that issues of health do not impact all Coloradans equally. The disparities impacting communities of color in Colorado were clear. Victoria De Leon looks at how lessons learned might create improvements.
We've seen vaccine clinics in unusual places this year. Churches, parking lots, flea markets. And despite the challenges that come with them,
getting people to sign up is a challenge.
Stacy Zuniga with the Latino Coalition of Weld County says they work. Stacy helped organize dozens of vaccine clinics, mostly in rural parts of Colorado.
I think it's important that we come to them.
The pandemic brought lessons with it about how to better reach underserved areas.
If we approach healthcare as equality and looking at how can we provide everything to everyone in the same manner, we're going to have the same outcomes that we had here, where we see more and higher devastating consequences to communities of color.
Instead, Dr. Ozzie Granardo says health systems need to approach healthcare through an equity lens. Dr. Granardo says the practices of meeting people where they are, sharing information in different languages, and going into communities to share information should continue beyond the pandemic.
That thought process really needs to continue for the next several decades. And until we get better at addressing some of the social determinants of health and/or addressing, for instance, racism in medicine, or at least the health disparities that we have in medicine.
All year, community organizations and health systems have worked hand in hand to take care of hard-to-reach areas and people. That includes communities with transportation, language, time, and even misinformation barriers.
There's so many things that were intertwined that we now see need to continue.
And so I think we've learned some lessons, some important lessons, and now we need to put those lessons into practice.
And so another way to address transportation barriers specifically is telehealth. Dr. Granardo said before the pandemic, it wasn't a common thing, and now online services make up half of his practice. And it's those kinds of things, Kyle, that are about meeting the needs of different people. So one thing he and Stacy both said is that misinformation continues to be the biggest barrier that they are still working on overcoming. So those lessons still to come.
I guess maybe on the plus side, Victoria, misinformation is a problem that you can fight, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, whether there's a pandemic or not. That can be an ongoing conversation with communities about how to find good information from trusted sources.
Yeah, absolutely. And now it's kind of as simple as, calling out that misinformation. So the community organizations, when they are scrolling down Facebook this time around and they see something that's not right, they call it out and make their own post. And that's kind of, where we are right now. That's
very interesting. Real time, like fact checking from people that they trust who are outside the news media. Very cool. We'll take all the help we can get. Thank you, Victoria. Colorado's COVID vaccination lottery, the 5 $1 million prizes, did not work. Democratic Governor Jared Polis tried to make the case that, our kind of sad vax numbers would have been even sadder without the lottery. But that argument seems strained. And now a researcher at the University of Denver has studied our vaccine lottery and those in 18 other states, and he has come to the conclusion none of them worked.
Lotteries are a little abstract in the sense that, I could win, but I'm really probably not going to. And that's a little bit different than putting a $100 bill in your hand. Another possibility is that we're dealing with a population or a subset of the population that has some firmly entrenched beliefs about vaccines. And until you can change those beliefs, any amount of cash is unlikely to change their behavior.
But let's go right to Governor Polis's claim that maybe the vaccine lottery didn't increase the vaccination rate, but the lottery prevented a sharper drop-off in the vax rate. DU professor Dr. Andrew Friedson says, nope.
So what's happening is that states that have lotteries and states that don't have lotteries are on the same trend beforehand. And then after the lotteries are announced, they stay on the same trend. So if the lottery had been effective, you would have seen that states that announced lotteries have better vaccination. And if Colorado was about to go off a cliff with regards to vaccinations, then you would have seen the states that did not announce the lotteries, that didn't have lotteries, also go off a cliff, right? Unless there's something very special and very different about Colorado.
Dr. Friedson, who is from CU Denver, not DU, my bad, he said that the vaccine lotteries were a chance to learn not to do that again. He called them big swings, whiffs that might have been worth taking, but probably should not be repeated in the future. So right now in Colorado, we know that there are people in abusive relationships who are gathering the courage to leave. A nonprofit called Latina Safe House is working behind the scenes, helping them build self-esteem, skills, and confidence to make their next attempt to leave their abuser the one that finally succeeds. And in the last 2 days, you at home, Next viewers, have raised $20,000 through your Word of Thanks microgiving campaign this week to help Latina Safe House reach more survivors. These are some portraits of survivors who were helped to safety by Latina Safe House. You can scan that QR code there on your screen, or as always, you can text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491, and I'll send you the link to join me and a bunch of others in donating. Latina Safe House is not the largest nonprofit that's helping domestic abuse survivors in Colorado, but their bilingual and culturally appropriate support is exactly what many Coloradans need as they're taking that courageous step to leave an abuser for good. The airport is opening a long, close parking lot as other ones overflow. It is not a permanent solution to the problem out there. Remote learning kind of ruined snow days. Another big district in Colorado says it's bringing back one of the great joys of childhood. And it's Friday, so you know what that means. Tell me something good.
We're celebrating our 5th year anniversary.
Good work, good news. It's all good. Pile on a couple more reasons to get to the airport early, and you're going to start seeing people camping out there overnight like it's Black Friday or something. DIA expects this coming weekend to be so busy, they're opening the long-closed Pikes Peak shuttle lot. But if you plan to use it, say it with me now, get there early. The Pikes Peak and Mount Albert lots have been closed for more than a year. Airport blames a shortage of shuttle drivers. The shortage remains, but DIA is going to reroute some shuttles from the economy lots out to the Pikes Peak lot. DIA told us they didn't do this to begin with because they don't want to reduce service on their main parking lots to open one of their overflows. But this weekend, they think, is just going to be bonkers busy. We asked DIA whether this means that people who park in the economy lots, east and west, whether they need to leave extra time as well. DIA said it was too soon to tell. So, say it with me again, get there early. Also, we should mention, there's no limit on how long you can leave a car in the Pikes Peak lot once it opens at 5 p.m. tomorrow. Shuttles will run out there whenever passengers request that stop. So this news program has a clear bias in favor of snow days. Watching kids lose out on the chance to ever have a snow day because remote learning got so easy, that was sad, and we said so. A student's appeal here on Next is part of what convinced Denver Public Schools to bring snow days back. Well, now it looks like the second largest district in the state, Jeffco, is going to do the same. Jeffco students, you might remember, got stuck in remote learning last spring when a bunch of other districts let the kids go outside and play in the snow and be kids. Well, it may not happen as much this coming winter. It's less about goodwill towards young people and more about the staffing shortage that's impacting everything.
If you can't clear the sidewalks going into the schools and get them sanded and safe for kids, then we don't open school. And we did see that happen last spring.
That's Laura Center, president of the Union for Jeffco Support Staff. She says you got custodians who are out clearing the sidewalk, transportation workers clearing parking lots, and they don't have enough of either. There's a need of at least 500 more workers. So Jeffco School's website says they will go with snow days for single-day weather closures, and they will explore remote learning if schools have to be closed for longer than that.
The calm after the storm, a picture-perfect October afternoon. Kevin capturing this awesome shot around Aspen, the fall colors, and of course, a little fresh snow. That storm system cleared out fast. We have clear skies tonight. Still going to be a cold one for southeastern Colorado as they are under a freeze warning until 9 o'clock. Temperatures falling to the upper 20s, low 30s here for the metro, and of course, colder up into the high country. High pressure is around. That keeps us dry this weekend and pretty warm too. A daytime high Saturday of 69. We'll stay in the 60s, low 70s off to the eastern plains with 50s up in the mountains. Look at Sunday, 75, a gorgeous afternoon for the Broncos game. Right now I am tracking a cool off next Tuesday with some scattered rain showers.
You got good food, good people. You're going to have good news.
Yeah, it seems that this is the month of good news for us.
Sounds like an excellent Friday to us. Nobody leaves here at the end of the week without a smile and gratitude, because this is Next. My brain to mouth pipeline is having a Friday. I want to clear up something we said about the Pikes Peak shuttle lot. It is open at the airport now, as they expect a lot of traffic today and tomorrow. They will close it to additional incoming vehicles at 5 p.m. tomorrow. I think I mucked up the timing earlier. Good and doing good. A restaurant recently named one of the top 50 in the U.S. is also giving newcomers to America a place where they can learn and build a career. The Kamal Heritage Food Incubator is where we went in search of your Friday good news.
It seems that this is the month of good news for us. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. My name is Arden Lewis. I am the program manager and executive chef at Kamal Heritage Food Incubator. I get it. It's that good. It's that good. My good news for today is that we're celebrating our 5th year anniversary operating as a program and lunch counter, supporting immigrant and refugee women who want to start their own food businesses for 5 years now. Yay! Awesome. 5 good years, 5 impressionable years, 5 motivational years. Yeah, really good news. We were just featured as one of the top 50 restaurants in America, the entire nation, by New York Times for their 2021 list. So really good news. Let's put a candle in it. Okay, Mari, lista? We also are celebrating one of our participants' birthdays, Maria Sandoval. So happy birthday to her. She's been in the program for almost 2 years now. Otra vez. It really feels good to be a part of this, especially when you think about the different backgrounds and the diverse levels of cooking knowledge that these women have. We have a very multicultural, multilingual environment here, and to see someone who is able to cook a recipe completely from their head and be able to put that down on paper and instruct a team, that's like good news. It's success all around. All right.
Good news and a skill I wish I had, recipe from your head and be able to translate it to somebody. Thanks to our photojournalist Corky Scholl for that dose of good news. You get the final word this Friday. Your feedback's next. Diego emails, you made an assertion tonight that supporting equity is different than supporting criminals. There's probably an unintended consequence that ties the two together. Well, Diego, if Greenwood Village Mayor George Lentz wants to make that case as he did in his attack mailer, our door is open. He just needs to return our request for comment. See you next time.